Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is your favorite warlock here, practicing necromancer. And today I want to take a little bit of time and kind of go over some studies that I've been furthering. And I think it's important because of what these items represent and how they work in unison with the practitioner and that of the spirits that you work with. Now, one of the topics is the Necromyicon. I've noticed a few of these groups popping up on Facebook and such. And of course, I've delved back into the Necromyicon myself. It's been a long time since I've done that. So, over the last month, I've worked with Cthulhu, and it has really benefited me in a lot of ways, but it's also hindered me in a lot of ways. Um, But one of the things that we're going to be discussing here is totems. And that's something that is rarely talked about these days. And I mean rarely. And you go underneath Google or you go under YouTube or any of these social media platforms, you will not see people talking about this stuff anymore. So and if you do, it's very rare. So why don't we start with talismans? Okay. Talismans are an item that you hang on the wall. You can even carry them in a lot of different ways. Um, the one thing that you want to take into consideration is hello, Studio Noor. Welcome to the channel. And God King Cthulhu. Welcome. So, anyways, the thing you want to take into consideration is what is a talisman? A talisman is a magical item, and basically you have two platforms here, Telesium and Telsam, okay? Or Tilsam, rather. Not really how sure how it's pronounced within its Arabic names, but um, Telesium is Tilsm, okay? Whereas Tilsam is Tilsam, okay? And what these represent and what they translate into is magical image or magical letter. Basically, it's an engraved inscription upon it. For an example, if you go under grimoire traditions and you go into, say, let's go with what everybody's into these days, just as an example, the Clavicle of Solomon or the Constitution of Pope Honorius, or hell, let's go into the Grimoire of Armadale or the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. Okay. Um, a talisman is something that is used for a magical alphabet, magical letters, and magical images. So you would see a demon's name, or a spirit's name, be it an angel, demon, jinn, devi, jinn, you know, um, d- demonic entity. You name it, it's there. So, but this is also written within foreign languages, such as Theban, known as the witches' alphabet. Let's go with the Hellgate system, or that of the Celestial, or say daggers. For an example, there's a lot of different alphabets that are associated with today's systems. So you would see things that would be like hieroglyphics. Okay, and what this does is it is used for defensive purposes. It wards off negativity. It wards off bad mojo. It literally will protect its um, the properties. of where it's located. Let's say, for example, you have it in your home. You got various different talismans hanging on your walls, one on either side of your windows, one on every wall, maybe even your doorway. Maybe above your doorway, or either inside or outside if you're in an apartment. Some landlords will allow you to put things on your door, so it's right outside your door. But you got to be careful because people will snatch them or dispose of them on you. Now, one of the greatest things that have been depicted is from Egyptian pantheon. Now, you remember I mentioned hieroglyphics, okay? In this hieroglyphic, we're thinking of Aleister Crowley, for an example. Um, Thor, or not Thor, but Thoth, rather. Thoth, the magician, okay? One of the things that was associated with him was the green emerald, okay? The green tablet, the green emerald tablet. And this was had a bunch of depictions on it from runes or some form of writing that was thought to be in a code. Okay, so this is something that was very interesting to depict. Now, if you go out into other branches, you're going to see things in wood, metal, clay, and stones. Very, very interesting things. And what's interesting is it supports and enhances um, your magical abilities. Okay. And what's interesting here is the fact that when you do this, when you do this stuff, it doesn't just enhance you from an external perspective, but when you're working with the properties, it enhances your magical abilities as well because you're not being hindered by all that mojo that would hinder you. Like say somebody cursing you or hexing you all the time. Well, guess what? This is something that would protect you from that. Um, the term amulet, okay, is derived from various different sources. In Jewish, you have Hamelet, okay. Um, let's go with what do you call that? Amuletum, Latin. You have Hamala, which is Arabic, and Kamia, which basically means not, but it's also a form of protection because even if you go into the Celtic traditions, you see the Celtic knots, the cross, the knotted cross. This is very interesting because of the fact that when you get into the Hebrew variation, it is literally a knot that binds. So when you're thinking about this aspect, no, it's not. It's not considered an obsession. Basically, it signifies rank, experience, and depending on the amulet and the ring, discerns and depicts what order or practice that you follow. So let's say, for an example, you're into let's go with paganism. Okay, in paganism, having a certain ring, like say, for an example, a silver ring with let's go with the sun, the ancient alchemical symbol for the sun, which is basically a circle with a dot in the center. This signifies that you would be a follower of, say, Apollo. Okay, and the amulet that you follow, that you have around your neck, would signify the tradition that you're in. Okay. So if you're into Egyptian pantheon, then this would depict that because you would either have wings, the all-seeing eye of Ra or Osiris, for an example. If you're into, say, for an example, let's go with Hinduism or uh, the Hansa hand, okay, that you see nowadays on amulets and just hanging from necklaces. Okay, this type of stuff signifies what path you're on. Your tattoos, for an example, would be considered an amulet and a talisman because they work with the deities. It's the same thing as a totem, which I'll get into that in a little bit. So, just because you wear a lot of rings, for an example, number one, necromancy. Number two, draconian path. Lucifer, okay, demonolatry. You have Native American blood, paganism, okay, or witchcraft. And then you have the Egyptian pantheon of necromancy, okay? So this kind of tells you a story. It would be like say for an example, if you follow tattoos, okay? It tells a story of, let me see here if I can bring this back here, of who you serve, who your patron is, and what path you follow, okay? That's what that signifies. It does not mean it's an obsession, although there is really nothing wrong with being obsessed with your studies and practices. It does not, there's nothing wrong with you becoming obsessed with a certain current. For an example, I have been obsessed with necromancy for the last 6 years. Okay. I love it. I have traversed many different regions of the world. I have gone into various different religions just on this topic alone. I've written 4 essays, three of which have already been published, and one that is hopefully going to be published pretty soon in Edgar Cavall's books of Sabbatica. And I'm also starting on my fifth, which is basically the tools and the items that you use for rituals and ceremonies. So, exactly, they are very powerful seals and they are also very powerful magnetic items. But you got to remember that when you're working with spirits, it doesn't matter what spirit that you're working with, it is that interchangeable energetic current. Okay. It goes both ways, the ebb and flow. Okay. So, anyways, as I was saying, the Latin variation of um, amu- amuletum means protection. Okay, whereas say the hemala is basically means to carry. Okay, so you really got to take that into account because whereas a talisman is just basically something that you hang, it is something of protection. It is also interchangeable with that of an amulet. So they basically benefit you, and they also can make you a little bit more powerful. Most amulets involve images these days of some form. They do. Let's take for an example, demonolatry. Okay, a lot of people when they get into rings these days and getting into jewelry, you're dealing with, say, for an example, the alchemical symbol for sulfur and the infinity symbol. Okay, this is basically the seal of Leviathan nowadays. Okay, but in the past, in alchemical practice, it is the symbol of sulfur and that of the infinity symbol combined makes it the symbol of, guess what? You got it, Leviathan. Okay, so this is a symbol that a lot of people are going by. So you're dealing with not only runes, you're dealing with depictions, hieroglyphics. You're dealing with symbolatry. You're dealing with sigilliums. All of this stuff is being placed on jewelry these days for people to purchase. If you followed my video on how to um, promote yourself with financially speaking by putting a little bit away, you will probably notice that it is something that will benefit you in the long run. It is a supply and need, so to speak. It's that need effect. Um, and a lot of times when you see depictions such as this, like amulets, you're coming from it from a Jewish, Hebrew, and Arabic tradition, traditional background. So I mean, there's a lot that's going into this, and what amulets do compared to talismans is it influences you externally. So not only does it protect you, but amulets will also become like how should I say this, acquisition, if you will, and will bring to you financial luck, goods of the world, stuff like that. It really deals with a lot of good things, and a lot of times in the past, you'll see where amulets were made from stones, minerals, um, metals, even clay, herbs, sacred relics. And again, when you get into sacred relics, you're getting into totems. Okay, and it's interesting because a lot of times in the old days, when you get into like Mayan and Aztec traditions, you're getting into Egyptian pantheons. You're getting into things like gold, diamonds, and other type of stones, which is very interesting. I mean, even if you get into the Talmudic system, Talmud, the word for this is quinim, which is, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. It's known as quinum, and this basically means to be tied, or how should I say this? Not just tied, but oh, what's the word I'm trying to think of here? Bound. Okay, tied or bound, because you know how you get into religious factions, and what happens is when you get into religious foundations, they have you take an oath. Okay, think of the witch's creed, the witch's oath, same exact thing, but you're getting into that you're taking that oath of commitment and dedication to that path. So therefore, the Talmudic system, which is the oldest known tradition here in this field of amulets, is basically you're taking that you're bounding yourself to that tradition. It would be like doing a blood pact in demonology. Okay, because you're aligning yourself with the forces of darkness, but you're also aligning yourself with your patron or patroness. Okay, very interesting stuff. I mean, even if you get into the Greek word for amulets, which is and this is something I had to write down. It was per periama, and it comes from the ama, meaning knot. Basically, again, you're seeing yourself being tied or bound to a tradition or system of magic. So you're really seeing that. Okay. Now, as for dark totems have a very long history, and I'm still delving into this on a serious level. I've been going through books, I've been going through Google searches, and I found totems going back between light and dark systems. For an example, when we think of light, totems within the JCI traditions, we're thinking the cross of um, of Christ, to which he was crucified on. We're seeing the chalice, which is considered a dark object. You're seeing a statue of some form, statues or obelisks that are considered to be dark totems, dark objects, scepters and canes, things that were tied to a magical system and to a practitioner of that said system. For an example, if we go in lore, we see the Oto clan. Basically, the Oto clan, otherwise known as, and I had to write a lot of this stuff down because um, the names are so long and weird, you don't even think of it or consider it. Basically, the totem, or Ojib Wa, it's Ojibwa is how it's pronounced. And from what I understand, this is actually a type of clan, is a word for Oto. Taman, meaning one's brother or sister. Basically, if you go into Druidic or Vikingdom, a lot of people like getting into the Norse traditions these days, such as shamanism and Viking. I mean, look at Parrish. What's his name? Peyton Parrish. There, a lot of people like that. And don't get me wrong, I love his music. Okay, I love it. The guy's got freaking talent in that area. But think of the blood pact between brothers of arms. Okay, that's basically what that means. And I mean, even if you go into the old Native American traditions, they always mix their bloods together as blood brothers. Okay, it would be the same thing when you're doing a blood pact with a demon. And you're making that infernal commitment to that demon as an apprentice, as a servant. Okay, with the, of course, you got to keep in that mind of the microcosm going into the macrocosm, of course, but still. But the grammar of this, it's basically a kind of kinship. Basically, the term totem is to be traits within a religious tradition. But when you look at the Oto, it signifies a blood relationship, whereas totem is in the English word for guardian spirit. So, I mean, when you hear the term guardian demon or guardian angel, where do you think that comes from? Not from the Christian, tradition. This goes way back to proto cultures. So far, I've only traced dark totems going back to the 6th century AD. Okay, that's a long freaking way back. Okay, that's long before the church. That's long before the Catholic, church was even considered. Okay, and if we go in, like I said, I mean, even if we go into Peter Jones's work, this guy referred to totems as being translated into great spirit. This brings us right back into Native American lore, which is kind of cool. And their name for it is Tudians, meaning totems within the Ojibwa clans. Now, most totems are forms of animals and or natural objects within a religious social structure uh, or within personalized religious acts. So, I mean, you look at your spiritual your spirit animal, your spirit guide. These are a lot different from being, say, for an example, a how should I say this? Think of it like this: you have your spirit, your spirit animal. Okay, you have your totem animal. You have your familiar spirits. All of these are different, and they all have different representations. For an example, if you look at a crow is associated with necromancy. It is associated with the realms of the dead in dimensional, how should I say, or transdimensional hip hoppities type stuff, because crows are said to be able to go between realms to carry a soul or messages. Ravens are the same thing, but ravens are considered birds of wisdom. Okay, so ravens in paganism and Wicca would be considered to be symbolatry of gnosis. The revealing of gnosis and the guiding forces behind the natural systems of nature. Okay, so this is something that's pretty cool. But for the most part, when you look at this, we see them as companions, relatives, protectors, progenitors, helpers, and a scribe. Okay, this is the symbolism behind them, and they're used by lineages, clans, tribals, Moet Moetes. I'm not even sure if I pronounced that right. It's Moieties. Okay, and then you got this other one, which is like Fractrix, Phuctx. RICS. And it's like I said, I mean, totems are found in a lot of different systems worldwide. And one of the most notorious ones is the Necromyicon by the Mad Arab. And in the story, in the introductory, it shows not only the planetary symbolatry of it being the time of Aquarius, and this is normally around January 15th through the 19th of February. So you got January and February, and this is the time when great devastation applies, great floods, great disharmony, political upheavals, and everything like that, and wars kick off. I mean, do I have to say more on that one? So, it literally shows between pages 7 and 12 of Simon's Necromyicon. If you learn to look beyond the actual words on the page and start paying attention to the seasons, and you start paying attention to um, where he started his tradition and his journey and ended that journey, you see the route that he took from like Babylonia all the way over into Mesopotamia and down into ancient Rome. So I mean, you're going through the Middle East, but also right there into the Greek and Roman traditions. So I mean, there's the Latin and the Greek connection right there to Mesopotamia. So I mean, it's pretty cool. It's not just going up into the North section, but it's interesting because one of the biggest stories that is in there is that damn obulist. And what's interesting here is you got the viewer sitting there witnessing at night after being washed up or getting stranded on this weird island, these priests dressed head to toe in black, you know, and they go to this pillar and they start chanting, and the pillar comes up out of the ground, and it's an obulist, and can't speak today. Yeah, it's one of those days, ladies and gentlemen. So basically, it comes up out of the ground and it's got three weird symbols on it. They're speaking in unknown tongues. And all of a sudden, after being noticed, the people just disappear, left, and all you got left behind are cloaks, the robes, and the ground is saturated with blood. So blood offerings is something that, and blood sorcery and blood magics are something that is yet again tied into these ancient systems. So it's nothing new when, in any given system. It's only your perspective of today's traditions. So, I mean, when one uses blood sorcery, let's say for an lancet, for an example, that you can get from your pharmacy, they'll ask you what type, A, B, or C. And you can, I would recommend A or B in that case. And it's just over the counter type stuff. It's all free. It's for public usage. You just pay for it and go. And you can use a steak knife. You can use whatever you want. I mean, I recommend personally the what is it? The Blood Sorcery Bible, Volume One by the Blood Sorceress Cagliostro, the necromancer, because of the fact she gives about 20 to 30 pages of just medical locations on the body where you won't do any harm to yourself. Okay. And yeah, exactly. Even in Homer's Odyssey, even if you go into, say, Paradise Lost, or the Jewish Haggadah, the Talmud, the the book of Tobit, the Zohar, you're going to see blood sorcery. You're going to be seeing forms of worship. So, I mean, like I said, again, Christianity is not the founder of this shit. So I don't believe that for a moment. In today's world, you have medical, professionals sitting there going, "Well, oh my God, you're self-cutting. You're depressed. You're trying to commit suicide. You're trying to hurt yourself. You got to be locked up." No, there's a difference between having a condition of trying to control your own pain, which is referred to as cutting, in an ancient controlled system of bloodletting, blood sorcery. Okay, there's a huge difference, and you have to educate these people on that. But today, when we're talking totems, we're dealing with ceramic skulls or human skulls, animal bones, depending on the phylactery, the type of altar that you have in the system you're in. If we go into Palo Mayumbi, you have what is known as the Ngunga or the Wenga. Okay, this, the spirit jar or the spirit box. This is stuff that is considered to be dark totems. Okay, so by placing your blood upon them, you're charging it. You're utilizing it on a daily basis to charge your practices. So I mean, all that plays into a huge effect in what you do. So even though you're using statues like, say, the statue of Isis or Bastet, Anubis, or say Baphomet, these are considered to be dark totems. Even if you go back into the ancient days and you have, say, for an example, let's go with Stonehenge here in America in Salem, New Hampshire. Okay. This was an ancient system that goes all the way back into the Stonehenge of England, but also all the way into modern day Beirut, Lebanon. It sits on a major ley line. It begins in Beirut and ends in Salem, New Hampshire. And so, I mean, and the one thing that has been depicted within the Gaelic systems of Druidism is the fact that there would be a priest underneath this stone structure with a bucket to catch all the blood, and up on top would be the sacrificial chamber, if you will. So the person would be strapped down, or the animal would, being sacrificed would be strapped down, and it would be bled out, and there's these little crevices that go out, and the blood would go into them and follow that stream all the way down to where that priest, the wise oak would be underneath, or the darak would be underneath with the bucket to collect the blood. Bones are synonymous with many cultures and many traditions because it is considered to be a connection to the land of the dead. Okay. You consider Anubis judges people with a human heart and a feather. Osiris is with the gold in the feather. Okay. With the scale. And if you go into the land of the dead, be it, let's go with Hades, you always see the human skull, as a mask. You have the death mask, the death urn, the balaclava, if you will. And then if you go into Norse mythology, bones, the casting of bones was a way to commune with the dead. You're dealing with a skull, which symbolizes when you look into the skull's eyes, you are peering into the land of the dead. In some cultures, they have myths of volcanoes. Um, Different cults, like say the cult of Artemis, the cult of Isis, the cult of Anubis. That sacrificed virgins, sacrificed, in such a way that you're also working with the Egyptian Book of the Dead. The Shem priesthood, for an example. They had different levels of priesthoods within that system. Okay. So again, the JCI was not the founders of the priesthood. They were not the founders of religious worships. Okay. These items were always held in high esteem within temples. A lot of times you're in caverns. Look at the agori of India. Okay. Look at the extremes that they go to and how they surround themselves with candles, human bones and skulls and animal bones. All of this stuff is right in there. Look at how um, altars are set up in the old days with runes written in blood, all kinds of stuff that you are not made aware of today because most people do not speak on it. Those who do become a threat to the system and are shut down. Okay. They end up with, yes, the agori. That's how you spell them. They're a very, very powerful system of magic, and I find that they're a lot like the Buddhists, the dark Buddhists who isolate themselves and work with the spirits. You go with the Bokor, the Kaplata. Those two are of Vudan. The Miramberos within Santeria and Pedo Mayumbi traditions. The Warlock within modern day witchcraft and say, for an example, pagan and Wiccan, considered to be the ultimate bad guy from the Welsh and Irish tradition. Wow, Scottish too. I mean, if they actually expanded their horizon, they would realize that it's just a male practitioner of sorcery. But you know how that goes, ladies and gentlemen. So these are three items that I would recommend that you do research on. And if you're interested in creating them, go for it. I mean, that's up to you. But remember that whatever you preach, whatever you practice, you are held accountable for. Whatever you preach, always back it up with numerous sources and always make yourself available to the public. Okay? Because, like I said, you are held accountable. Even if you are an ordained archbishop, priest, or, say, for an example, yeah, my screen is freezing up here. So, yeah. But, yeah, so that's all I got to say, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank Studio Nor for jumping on here with me. Godfrey 524, um, God King Cthulhu 138. It's an honor having you here. Thank you for jumping on here with me. And apologize that my screen is, freezing up at this time. It's normally a sign I've been on here too long. Plus, I got to go pick up my son from school in a little bit. So, but yeah, you really got to go back into history to find it. I always say that if it does not add up between folklore, archaeology, history, and mythology, those are up here too. So you, I would not believe it because if it doesn't align between all of them, then guess what? It's most likely fictitious and made up. So going back into folklore, going into mythology, going into history, you can get a sound mind of judgment of, okay, this is real, this is something that was actually practiced, and then you can delve into the sources surrounding it. Okay, but like I said, do so at your own discretion. You are responsible for whatever you do and say and come up with in that area. All right, so with that said, have a good one, and until next time, I'm out.